Hello everyone, Skybaldy Red. Nottingham Forest are underway in the Premier League with a 2-1 defeat to Arsenal. We discussed the good and the bad in the game, plus a bit of transfer news in the company of, first of all, Reds legend Garry Birtles. Morning, Gary. You well?
Yeah, good morning. Very well, thank you. Yourself?
Yes, good to have you with us. I'm feeling fine, 100%, nothing wrong with me at all. Second guest is Reds fan Michael Temple. Temps, how are you doing?
Feeling good, mate. Looking forward to Friday.
Yes, we'll talk a bit about Friday as well. Obviously, first home game of the season against Sheffield United. And our third guest today is a man who's very angry at Match of the Day in Greg Mitchell. Greg, how are you doing?
Good, yeah, feeling great. You're looking a bit under the weather. Are you all right?
No, just
because
he was crying it in about 2 minutes ago that he's doing all sorts.
All I said was before we started recording that I spent most of the weekend in London. And I feel like I've got a cold coming because I was surrounded by people. I normally sit at home all day on my own. So I got no sympathy at all. So now I'm feeling very well, thank you. 100%. Greg, kick us off. What's your beef with Match today, Greg, before we get into the game?
It's just the refusal to even acknowledge us, to acknowledge how much better we played in the second half. Barely showed the goal. I know they've got a lot to get through, but they'll spend 15 minutes talking about Max Lowe pushing Hodgson and not even discussing how great our goal was, and just the way they didn't even discuss the penalty. They just laughed it off like, a bit of a joke. And yeah, I just think they need to shake it up a bit. It gets a bit tedious on there nowadays.
We'll get onto the penalty in due course, or the penalty appeal with Declan Rice. But what did you make of it overall, Greg?
Good. First off, it nearly worked first off. I'm in an NFL group with a wide range of football fans, and my Spurs mate messaged me at half time saying, I think there's a swear word in it, so I won't say that, but he says, I've just had a look at your timeline, and I thought Spurs was bad. And the negativity at half time, I just thought they scored one wonder goal and one that you could argue was quite lucky. But other than that, the game plan almost worked in that first half. We had a golden chance where we almost scored, and it could have been so different. And then the difference between the attitude of a lot of the fans in the first half to the final whistle was massive. And I think just that little bit of hope compared to where we were last season. I think I just broke a photo. Don't tell Laura. But compared to where we were last season, 5-0, half time, thinking, God, there's not a chance, to what happened on Saturday. Yeah, we still got the same amount of points, but, bring on Friday for me, because if we start showing more spells like we did on Saturday, we're going to be a real force to some teams.
Talking of the 5-0 last season, I've got some stats here. This was sent to us by Mark Southerns, who Greg knows as our resident FPL expert, and he's a big Forest fan. Last season, the 5-0, we allowed Arsenal 22 shots, 17 in the box with 5 big chances and an XG of 2.3. I know some of you boys love XG. Saturday, we kept them down to 15 shots, 8 in the box, and not a single big chance. Arsenal only had an XG of 0.83. Only Palace and Man City have so far prevented a big chance on goal. Not so bad with no Felipe or Niakate in the team. What do you make of that? Actually, I'll come to Temps first, and I'll go to Gary, because I know Gary's got particular thoughts on where we went wrong. What do you make of it in general, Temps, and what Mark says there around the stats?
Well, look, they beat us on the pitch, and they beat us statistically as well. But having had a year of seeing how a newly promoted club has to cope in the Premier League, we know we're going to cede possession, and we know we're going to cede chances. What Forest hope to do is to take their chance when it comes, and Brennan fluffed his lines with that one-on-one. He hasn't done that in the past. There's been plenty of examples where this game plan has worked because we've taken that chance against the head and then defended for our lives. So that was a pivotal moment. But for me, the big positive is the preseason doom has evaporated. We've seen that when we get our, what is currently our best 11 or not far away from it, out there, it's a very different proposition from tuning up against some European side who play a different style in training camp conditions. So I hope that's evaporated. We can look forward to Friday with some confidence. But yeah, statistically, that's going to happen again and again and again. We had 20% possession. We have a plan for that on the road, and I think we're better at that now. The supporters have bought in to an extent and seen that is how you have to do it when you go and play Big Six clubs away from home. So not surprised by the stats, not entirely surprised by the result, but there were green shoots in there for me that show we're going to be more competitive on the road this season than last.
So Gary, I know I spoke to you this morning and you were upbeat as well, but the frustration for you was around the manner of the goals conceded before we break them down specifically. Is that right?
Yeah, well, how many times last season did we say avoidable goals? And those were both avoidable goals. Yet again, Steve alluded to it in his interview afterwards. He was annoyed with how we conceded. And he's right as well. The first one, yeah, Martinelli, it was a nice little bit of skill, but he didn't mean to do what he did to get it to the guy who scored the goal. And then the deflection beat Turner. If that deflection hadn't come, I think he'd have saved it. And the second one, it was, nobody mentioned the fact that Morgan gave the ball away in an area that he shouldn't have given it away. He should have just cleared his lines, and that wouldn't have happened. Yes, it was a fantastic goal, but we created that opportunity for him to score a fantastic goal. It wasn't brilliance in the first stage. It was in the clinical finishing of it, but we provided him with that opportunity. And you can't do that against players like that at this level. And, I spoke to you before. I think the one thing that not disappointed me, I was delighted with the way it went, because I thought the discipline there was a lot better throughout the team. It's just the first game of the season and how we beat Arsenal last season and how sorry for themselves they felt. I just thought there was an opportunity with it being the first game to maybe take it to them and say, right, okay, we're not going to sit back. Let's just have a go for, a while and see how they react. And if they did react in a good way, then, go back to, plan A or whatever. I just thought Arsenal might just be there for the taking. But, in the second half, I just thought Steve changed it well. Maybe you could have said it would have been nice to see the two lads come on earlier, Belanga and Awoniyi. But when they did come on, I mean, that goal was absolutely terrific. If this talking about Saka's goal, yeah, it was great. But I was just so impressed with the desire of Awoniyi when he came out. And I just watched him. He sprinted the length of that field. It was just unreal. People said, well, he wasn't fully fit. I'd love to be as fully fit as that, I'll tell you. The ground he made up was just absolutely stunning. And that desire and, the final ball from Belanga was just, perfect for a striker. Hit the near post. That's what you get. It was terrific.
A lot to unpack there, as Gary says, and all true. One of the things Temps Gary said, a lot of people said about, be a bit braver, be a bit more attacking. And I think the manager in his post-match interviews, I think he expected more from the team in the first half in terms of winning duels and being better on the ball. I suppose I don't know if frustration is the right word, but in some of these away games, we're going to have 10% more possession, aren't we, for at least?
Yeah, Steve Cooper was very open about that. I think that was his key message afterwards, wasn't it? He spoke about showing clips to the players at half-time where they perhaps hadn't been physical enough or had showed too much space and time to players like Martinelli and Saka, who are Premier League ballers, who can cut inside and do what they do. So I think that was a coded message to the fullbacks to be more aggressive with those boys, to take a risk, back themselves with pace if they get too tight, not to stand off and to make it uncomfortable for them. I think it's well trodden now how Arsenal like to structure their attacks to allow Saka to come in off the wing. And he provided a bit of a case study as to why and how he is so dangerous doing that. So, yeah, I thought Steve Cooper's comments there were very measured. I think it's always refreshing when any Premier League manager looks inwardly. He did have a whinge about Declan's hand, but he spoke very honestly about what he wants his players to do more of. He wants them to be harder, give less respect to established players, clobber them early if they have to. There was an example of that, a positive example of that on Saturday. So, yeah, I understood Cooper's comments. They resonated with me. I think they'll land with the players that they were aimed at. We're here now. We're not the upstarts. We want to start to climb the table. And to do that, we've got to mix it with teams that we have respect for.
I think, Temps, you go back to the Arsenal game last season and the winning goal was caused by a brilliant press and dispossessing Arsenal, wasn't it? That's where it came from. And I think that maybe Steve, remembered things like that, because you do remember. He remembers everything. And maybe we didn't do that as well as we could have done collectively. You can do it individually, but against a team like Arsenal, it has to be collectively. And that came across in his comments after the game. But his first game of the season, we lost 2-1 for goodness sake to Arsenal, who were top of the league for a big extent, of last season. And to start off like that, we've got difficult games coming up, but they're early in the season. We've got Man City, we've got Chelsea. I watched Chelsea yesterday and was quite impressed with how they responded to Liverpool going in front and probably being the better side. So, it's not going to be easy, these opening games. So the Sheffield United game becomes, a must-win game. I think it is, even though it's the second game of the season. But there were very good signs there against Arsenal. Yes, I agree totally. We expect not to have as much possession. And then it's all about not switching off. And we didn't really switch off. It was just sloppiness that caused the goals, giving the ball away when you shouldn't in a bad area. We saw that so many times last season, some of the goals we conceded. Cut that out and get everybody fit. We've got a hell of a squad, I think.
There's 500 people watching, so do us a favour and give us a like. It would be a big thing for us and very much appreciated. Greg, what did you make of Turner coming in for his debut? I thought he did pretty well, to be fair. What did you make of it?
Neither goal was his fault. I was on the third row, so I was really close to him. He looked lively. Obviously, it was not only a big game for him doing his debut, but playing at a ground he was playing for a couple of weeks ago. So I thought he did excellent, made some good stops. I liked how he's always quickly trying to throw the ball out. Didn't always work because it seemed like we weren't ready to receive it, but he wanted to get the ball going quick, which is always good in the way these modern keepers work. So I still hope we get a Henderson or another keeper because we need one, but I absolutely think Turner's a number one for the foreseeable, and he'll really try to keep that place. And from Saturday's performance, there's no reason why he'd lose it at the minute.
Yeah, I'll be really reticent to say we don't need Dean Henderson now and we don't need a second goal. It's just one game, but it was encouraging. I mean, would you be comfortable with him, Gary, for holding the shares based on what you saw?
Based on what I saw, yes, without a doubt. And Arsenal don't take, second-rate, players. They're a top team. So, the pedigree is going to be good coming from there. It's the encouragement we got. I mean, but the one thing that worries me, we're talking about signing players, is the striker. You saw how important Awoniyi was when he came on, and how important he was when he was fully fit last season. If he gets injured again, I think it could be a little bit of a struggle again, because then you're relying on Brennan again, who's not an out-and-out striker. You've got Chris Wood, who was signed, but he got injured last season. And, if you're down to bare bones, then it could become a little bit of a struggle. The importance of having somebody to come in and, be on the bench if, one you does get injured, then, that's a bit of a concern for me.
What do you make of Brennan as a 9, Thames? If he scored that one chance and come off the pitch after 70 minutes, we're saying he's had a really good game, but he's missed that one chance. So what do you make of him through the middle?
It's a better plan B than Chris Wood for me, but it's odd in that it changes our style completely, doesn't it? He has to take those chances if he's going to become an out-and-out number 9. But I think we'll see him off the right. As Gary said there, we've seen the impact that Taiwo has. And also, I thought he was very positionally aware as well. That there were a lot of times when he did tuck in, helped Aurier, was more than willing to fit in and shape into that defensive setup. But it is a more attacking shape going forward now. That was an out-and-out 4-3-3 for periods in the game. Even when Elanga came on, we saw that he can offer a kind of counter threat to Brennan Johnson if they were to be paired together with Taiwo through the middle. So yeah, impressed with a lot of elements of Brennan's performance. I think as well, look at him physically as well. It's very clear if you compare his body shape now to the start of the season last year. He's put on 5 or 6 kilos. He's grown into his body. And, that will translate into strength on the ball, into endurance and everything else. He was a bit of a waif 18 months ago, but he's clearly applying himself there and becoming a more complete Premier League footballer.
I think one thing, going back to Taiwo again, I think one thing that impressed me that I watched, because I obviously always watch strikers, his hold-up play when he came on was absolutely superb for me. In the time he was on the pitch, his strength and the difficulty he made for defenders by doing what he did, knocking them off balance, backing into them. Defenders don't like that. And you can see the players will play off him. His teammates will. They know what he can do. They know he's good in the air. They'll gamble. But he'll hold it up and somebody will lay it off. And then you've got Alanga's pace going in behind. You've got Brennan's pace. You've got Morgan's pace and Tricky. I just think his importance to the team, is so heavy from what I've seen last season to what we saw when he came on. He's just pivotal to, I think, us doing well this season. Yeah, he could get injured because strikers do, but I was just, so impressed with his overall performance with the little time he was on the pitch.
Oh, yeah, he's essential to us. We're a different team without him. Gary, just talk us through Brennan's chance. I mean, was that because I actually think Brennan's a really good finisher. We saw v Everton, v Leicester, v Leeds last season. He is a good finisher, but he fluffed his lines there. Is that just a lack of pre-season, do you think?
I haven't got a problem with what he did there, because Brian Clough always said to me, make your mind up early, one-on-one. What he always said to me, make your mind up, don't change your mind what you're going to do. I mean, everybody's saying, he should have gone around the keeper, blah, blah, blah. It's all right, but he made his mind up to do what he did. And we saw last season some of the goals that he scored were very similar positions, and he finished it brilliantly. He's brave enough to get in those positions, and he won't stop being brave getting into those positions. That's what it's all about as a striker. You're going to miss some, but he made his mind up what he wanted to do, and it didn't come off for him. Next week or Friday night, he might do, something totally different and score. We've seen him do that. He has all the goals in his locker. And so yes, it was a good chance. Yes, he wasn't very close in the end when you saw it from behind, but he made his mind up what he wanted to do early. And I haven't got a problem with that.
I still think, I must admit, I wouldn't be at all surprised if he left and went to Spurs based on the noises that we hear, that Spurs are interested, especially now Kane's gone. I watched the Spurs game yesterday, if anyone else saw it. I mean, they play a totally different way. They're very intricate. They play in very tight spaces. It's a totally different way to Brennan plays for us. I mean, what would your advice be to him, Gary? I know you've consistently said he should stay, but Spurs are a very big club and they've got they play a very good brand of football. What would you say to him today if the chance came to go?
I would say stay at Forest at the moment. I think another season at least. I'm still a bit worried for Tottenham, and I think quite a few people have said the same. I watched yesterday, and at the back they look vulnerable, but now Harry Kane's gone. Son didn't have his usual impact. Richarlison, is he going to be the replacement for him? If Brennan does go, the pressure will be immense on him because he's replacing Harry Kane literally. So, I would at the moment say, just stay where you are at the moment. You can see what Steve's trying to do, and just gain a little bit more experience. You're still a young lad, and you've still got a big future ahead of you. Just keep learning your trade and improve.
Yeah, I mean, I think Steve-O said in the comments, Brentford's style suits Johnson. It does. Brentford's style is much more suited. But why would you go? No disrespect to Brentford. I know Greg has no respect for Brentford. But why would you go to Brentford when you can stay at Forest? I don't understand it. It's the sideways move at best. So
he's not going to Spurs. They're going to get. Is it that Eze from Palace?
They like Eze, yeah, but he's a different kind of player again. He's more of a.
Johnson's 2 years away from being, or one very good season away from being a Spurs starter, and they need a starter now, don't they? I think it's all rumours made up by God knows what side, but I just don't see it at all with Johnson. And the other thing is, like the way that Elanga and Taiwo linked up, we've relied on Gibbs White and Johnson to link up. Like suddenly we've got that other way now. Johnson's got competition, which is healthy. So I think another season with us, he's only going to improve, and it'd be crazy to go to Spurs. Look what happened with Spence, and we've had others in the past. So yeah, I just think it'd be a silly decision. I think it's a lot more paper talk than real talk.
I mean, you see Brennan staying along with Wonyi staying fit and Elanga playing as we know he can do, and that's going to frighten teams to death. You've got power, strength, pace, awareness, finishing. It will cause teams real problems. I mean, let's not forget, we went to Anfield last season and, only lost by the odd goal. We beat them at home. We beat Arsenal at home. We did well against Chelsea on both games. It was just the Manchester United, we couldn't do anything against them. We didn't score a goal against them in all the games we played. So you look at the top teams and, we weren't a million miles away at times. We drew with Man City. We got battered at their place, but a lot of teams do, even in the top teams. So I just think with what we've seen in that first game, I always, people say, well, Forest didn't have this, great pre-season. Pre-season for me is all about getting your fitness levels right. And I think the most important it is for a striker, to start getting goals early in friendly games. That's what pre-season's about. Not about winning games. It's about preparation for what we saw on Saturday. Pure and simple, nothing else. And that preparation looks as though it's been good. We stayed in that game right the way till the end of it. We didn't look tired. We didn't look out of it at the end. And that is a very, very good sign for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think we saw that with Brennan. If he'd had more pre-season minutes, I think maybe he's a little bit sharper for that chance.
Strikers need to be, believe me. Yeah, everybody does, but the sharpness strikers have, only comes with consistent games and, time on the pitch. And, if you're slightly behind, that's going to happen. But you can quickly catch up. You can do that. You can do bits yourself. And, yeah, it was very encouraging for me.
There's some skepticism in the comments about Brennan to Spurs, but they are definitely interested in. They haven't, as far as I know, they haven't bid for him, but they definitely do like him, as do Brentford, as we well know. We've mentioned Elanga a couple of times. Temps, his impact from the bench was obviously tremendous. Should he be starting straight away? But if so, would he have to come in for a Brennan? Or would we go 4-2-3-1? What did you make of him?
Well, just straight line speed. I mean, nobody on planet Earth likes defending against someone that's quicker than them. And it was just so refreshing for him to pin his ears back and just run as far as he did. Almost as impressive as Taiwo's interception, ability to keep pace with him and get across Ben White for the finish. So, yeah, Langa's a weapon. We need to deploy him, particularly when we're up against weaker opposition at home. So it is a question of how you fit him in the side. And I think you alluded to it there, Matt, but we need, for me, to play a flat back four to allow us to get these flair players into the side at home, because we're trying to make a case here for Elanga to play on the left with Brennan on the right, Taiwo through the middle if he's fit. Of course, we can all see that's what Cooper wants to do. But then you've got decisions to make in the centre of the park where Gibbs White is going to play as the most advanced central midfielder. So it's probably Mangala that would drop out to allow Danilo and Yates to screen the back four and marshal the midfield. So then I suppose we're yet to learn what we think of Olarena in a back four. I know he likes to get forward. He's attacking, fancies himself as a bit of a dribbler as well. So that there could be a very attacking look to the Forest side on Friday night. I think the fans would be most excited if we could get that combo going, that Elango, Taiwo, Brennan Johnson. I just wonder if it's going to be seen as too disruptive to blood Taiwo and Elanga at the same time to make two changes. For me, it's McKenna and Mangala that would drop out to accommodate that. But to your earlier point, Matt, we'd have to see a flat back four deployed if we're going to go with those combinations further up the pitch. Nice problem to have.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk more about it in the preview. I would
about Elanga. Yeah, just one thing quickly. We talk about his pace, and that was evident. But what he did at the end of that, run, that 50, 60-yard run, was play a fabulous ball across the face of the goal. I watched 2 games yesterday, and I was taken aback by the lack of the quality that was coming in from those sort of areas, from quality players. Sometimes he would just put in there, for no particular reason. It was just, half-hearted sort of thing. Once you've done that, with that pace to deliver the quality of ball he did, that's a striker's dream. And, if you've got that in your locker, and we've got, strengths coming off the bench now as well, when everybody's going to be fit. It's looking a very, very, very strong squad.
That's a good point as well, Gary. So the impact of a player running at a broken field against tired opposition when a game's wide open suits Alenga. So whilst I'm making the case for starting him, you can imagine the impact he's going to have with 30 minutes from the bench.
Yeah. I mean, we'll do more on Sheffield United on Thursday. I wouldn't always advocate for 4-2-3-1 with this squad because I don't think our midfield's good enough. But I would in this instance because I thought, Sheffield United were really poor against Palace, and they look to be they don't look to have the team in place. So yeah, I'd like to see that. Just going back to Taiwo's goal, Gary. Chris Wood wouldn't score that goal because he doesn't have the athleticism. No disrespect to him. And Brennan wouldn't score that goal because he probably doesn't have the striker's instinct. But Taiwo does, doesn't he? I mean, the run he makes to the near post is perfectly timed. So a lot of strikers would be tempted to pull off to the back post there, wouldn't they? But did Taiwo do the right thing?
Absolutely. I think it's a dying art hitting the near post. And what you know as a striker, when you see your teammate under pressure, he's run that distance, you know he's going to be shattered, and you know that it's probably going to come near post. So that is your instinct to go to that near post. The number of times you see strikers who don't, and the ball comes in there, and you think, well, if only he'd gone there, he gets himself a goal. And Taiwo does that. He hits that near post. He has that instinct, and while you've got that in your team, and the wide men know that he's going to do that. I mean, we saw that against when Brennan made the goal against Southampton away last season. Again, one year had made all that ground up, and Brennan put it perfectly. And he's done the right thing as a striker. That instinct gets you in there. I just love to see him play. I watched him from our box to their box, and I was just so impressed with his desire to want to get on the end of that because, people were saying he's not 100% fit, but my word, he made that ground up unbelievably. To stay up with Alenga as well with his pace, come on, he's good.
Do you still think we're a striker light in the squad though, Gary?
Yeah,
Chris Wood didn't get a look, did he? So he seems a bit out of favour.
No, I know he plays he's a totally different player to Awoniyi. We know he is. He's a totally different player to Brennan. He doesn't have that searing pace. He'll hold it up. He's one of those target strikers, but I don't think he's going to be a first choice striker. So I think looking at going forward, we saw how detrimental it was to us last season when we lost the two centre halves in the same game. If you're losing quality in certain areas, then you will struggle a bit. The only good thing about, we've got that depth. If Brennan does stay, then we know that we can win games with him, with Morgan, and by having the players, even Danilo, who I think, looked a little bit off the pace on Saturday. But yeah, I just think the bench is looking very strong. We've got Felipe to come back. We've got quality players who are not 100% fit. And when they are, then, we're looking good.
A few players did underperform, and we'll touch on a couple maybe. But we've mentioned Ola Aina, Greg. I thought, he did really well. Considering Cooper said he wasn't 100% fit, well, he did really well as a left wing back, didn't he?
Yeah, and he was up against Saka for the majority of the game. So, talk about a tough start to your new team. I thought he did excellent. The goal Saka scored certainly wasn't his fault. And he played very well. I remember at the start, there was a couple of wayward passes and I thought, oh dear, but maybe that was just nerves of what was happening. But he certainly came on during the game and full of confidence towards him. Like the both new starters had excellent games, like probably two of our better players, obviously. So if we are only going to recruit 2 or 3 this season, or maybe a couple more, as long as they all work, it's going to be more than enough.
You'll have seen Aurier up close then, Greg, from where you were. He didn't look 100% fit. No. Can he play as a wing back for you, or does he have to play as a right back, really?
I think he'll have to until we get others back. But he's more comfortable, obviously, as a right back. He was asked to do a job, and there maybe was a little bit of a fitness issue. I thought he looked a little bit bigger as well than last season, but he certainly didn't disgrace himself. He just wasn't one of the best players on the pitch, let's say. But you could say the same about Gibbs White. He had a couple of shaky moments. Obviously, the goal itself was down to him. But regarding Gibbs White, if you're going to have that kind of skill and that kind of flair player, he's going to want to keep the ball a little bit longer, and he is going to make mistakes like that. And it's kind of weighing up the good and the bad, and the good massively outweighs it for a player like him.
I know what Gary's going to say.
Don't make him in that area.
That's what I knew he was going to say.
Yeah.
Used to make him in that area. Don't make it look big. If you do that, it against somebody like that, the top teams, you're more than likely to get punished. And I remember, was it the Newcastle game last season? I think he got dispossessed in that one, and they went straight up and scored. You've got to learn by your mistakes sometimes, and I'm sure he will, because we all not forget. I mean, what a tournament he had for England. So he's had all that to contend with as well. And then every player is going to be different going into a first game of the season. Some are going to look absolutely sharp as tacks. Others are going to be off the pace a little bit, because that's the nature of your body. Not everybody's got the same metabolism. Not everybody, is ready, prepared on that first game of the season. It doesn't work like that. We're human beings. We're all different. What suits one doesn't suit another. So it's not that much of a concern to me. It's just the basic mistakes that we've done, and we've done before last season, to concede goals that would concern me more than anything, which Steve spoke about afterwards. And those duels that you have to win sometimes. So yeah, on the first, you're going to get average performances, you're going to get good performances, but that first game of the season is so important for everything. Then your mental strength going forward, and that away performance will give the players big heart, I would think, without a doubt.
Gary makes a good point there, Temps, as well, about hitting the ground running. I mean, obviously our midfield struggles, but when you're up against Rice, Odegaard, Partey, as much as they told us for 10 minutes, kept coming inside as well. It was a difficult day for Yates, Danilo, and Mangala, wasn't it?
Yeah, of course it is, but it's the blend we found after trying 7 or 8 different combinations last year, and I like it. Mangala great in tight spaces. Danilo has that bit of flair about him, doesn't he? But does the dirty work as well. And Yates is just all energy, headers and tackles, and the bite that you need in centre mid. So, look, I agree wholeheartedly with the team selection from the Arsenal game, but I know we're going to see some changes on Friday.
Just want to talk about some transfer stuff for about 10 minutes or so. Steve Cook's gone, and we should give a word to Steve Cook. Greg, a hero of promotion. I know he didn't really cut it, particularly in the Premier League, but he's going to be fondly remembered, isn't he, for someone who played so few games relatively for us?
Yeah, that penalty in the semi-final, that'll always go down. The celebration, the way he hung about when he wasn't in the 25 as well, I think that was a real measure of the bloke, and was still supporting us to the very end. And he'll do really well at QPR. It might be the case that he gets them up again and he's in the same position. I think he's got a 2-year contract with them. So delighted he's got another top team, really, especially in the Championship. And he'll be missed. He was so unlucky to not make that 25 when you look back at what happened in the weeks after with the injuries. So, it's sad to see him go, but there clearly wasn't a place for him. We've got 5 very good centre-backs at the minute, and it's one of those areas where I'd say we don't need strengthening as it stands. We've got 2 coming back rather than looking out for injuries. So yeah, it was sad to see him go, but certainly the right time.
I think they are looking for another one because of Felipe's injury, I think, is a concern. But I think Aurier can be seen as a central defender this season as well, but we need to get Felipe back. But there's a lot of links with so many. If
Luke Shaw can play there for Manchester United, that speaks volumes, and he did it particularly well. So, versatility is still very important at any level, and if you've got that in your squad, then that's excellent.
This is a wider point, Gary. It feels like a different game now, defending. You see fullbacks coming inside to play as midfielders. Ben Chilwell was Chelsea's best attacker yesterday, ostensibly a left wing back, but really a left forward. And the Brentford v Spurs and Liverpool v Chelsea, I mean, neither team seems particularly asked about defending. It feels like it's a different, evolving game ever more, isn't it?
It is, and it's different for every team. It's about your personnel that you've got within your squad that you've got to utilise and play to the benefits of the team. And I think when you look at our defensive positionings, I think we've got, a lot of scope there, a lot of range, and we can play different systems. It's not rigid. It can be moved around a bit, and it's good to see that. I think the flexibility we have in the squad is excellent, and that's why I'm so confident of moving forward this season. I see us improving, and I see people being frightened to play us, because of maybe what they saw on Saturday, what they saw at the back end of last season. How we finished the season. And the majority of that squad who were, was instrumental in just keeping us up are still there. We've lost Lodi, obviously, and Navas. But, the majority of the players are still there. So, yeah, why not go with a smile on your face going forward?
As Nick says, hit the like button. Thanks, Nick, who's always very good at that. 650 people watching. I want to talk about Scarpa temps. There's people in the comments, as every time we do this, there's people who are absolutely adamant he should be in the team. And I don't mean this disrespectful. I'm not sure what they're basing it on, because we haven't seen much of him. Obviously, he's done brilliantly in Brazil. He looks like he's going to Olympiacos, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if he did. Can you see why people are so annoyed that he hasn't had a kick?
Well, the calls for Scarpa to be included, for me, is one of those examples of you being a better player out of the team than you are when you're in it, and you're not seeing how he performs consistently, what his levels are like, and how he is relative to others. So the reason he's not getting into this side is because at the minute we're still trying to find a way to squeeze in Alanga and Taiwo, who are ahead of him. We're probably also trying to recruit another central midfielder, which could displace one of Mangala, Yates, or Danilo potentially. So he just finds himself behind other players who are seen as better options. Now, look, where we're at and the development phase that we're in, there are going to be games that we lose where people make a call for change. I think those of us on the outside that see a defeat call for change. Those on the inside perhaps more likely to persevere with those in possession of a shirt. So look, we haven't seen loads of him. We saw flashes like, Blackpool in the Cup last season where he was making ranging balls and doing bits and bobs. There have been a couple of off-field challenges that have been reported elsewhere. Forest are in a bit of a, tangle's the wrong word, but walking a precarious line with FFP. So an opportunity to get him off the books and send him to the sister club for a few quid doesn't seem like a bad thing for me. I just can't see him being a consistent Premier League starter. I don't think he's necessarily the change of pace player from the bench. I think we've got better options. So I do see the logic in offloading Scarpa, despite the lack of game time he's had during his time at Forest.
I mean, I saw him in the Valencia game when, I went to Valencia to watch that game. And there was definitely a spark there. There was definitely something that made you sit up and take notice. His range of passing, his vision, his ability. But I'm trying to think of the Forest player before who there's big things expected of, and he went to Olympiacos. Come on,
Carvalho. Carvalho is a very, very similar trajectory there, who arrived with a YouTube highlights reel that was like, what he couldn't do wasn't worth knowing about. But then you put him in the environment and you put him alongside other, great players, and it's tough to stand out. Like, he'll go on and be successful elsewhere. Like, he'll find a level, and his pedigree in Brazil was exceptional. I can see every ounce of logic as to why we brought him in. It hasn't worked out, and I don't think there's any sense really in keeping someone that struggled with game time for a year and has an opportunity to go and find it elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I would keep him personally if we can, but I've said this before. I don't see where he starts in the team, because you're not going to drop Gibbs White and you're not going to drop Danilo. I think he's really good off the bench, and if Gibbs White gets injured, then I probably would give him a chance. But what we're seeing with the way Forest are developing is the whole team is about pace and power and athleticism. That's what Danilo is. That's what Elanga is. That's what Johnson is. Gibbs White is sent. I mean, Taiwo is the best example. And I just don't see Scarpa as someone who fits into this team physically as much as anything. I think he'll go to Olympiacos or somewhere else and he'll do well. And he could come off the bench for 20 minutes in our team and do well. But I think he's too much of a luxury in this team. That's not me saying he's a bad player. I just don't think he fits as a starter. And I don't see how people can be so adamant that he's the answer or he's not the answer. We don't know. But people who are burying Cooper for saying he's not in the team, I mean, I'm not seeing that personally yet. Have you got anything as definitive as me to say, Greg, or not?
I just think with Scarpa, we're a team that counterattacks and gets 30% possession, and that might go up a little bit from last season. If it was high 20s last season, it might be 30-35% this season. But Scarpa wants the ball, doesn't he? And, we're going to lose it and we'll get dispossessed and we'll get put in trouble. So, yeah, maybe he's not one for us now. And I think he's, 29 now. So I think if he does go, I disagree with some of the comments. I think you have to sell him and get some money back in that pot, like Temp says. We're not really sure about FFP at the minute. So he gives us a bit of a buffer because there's not many players in that squad who would like to get rid of that we can get some money back for. And he's clearly one of them.
Yeah, he's another player. I mean, the Carvalho comparison is accurate in the fact that he's another player we're going to debate endlessly. And I do feel sorry for him because it's obvious his big dream was to come to England and make it. And he's not really had that chance. And the cards haven't fallen for him with injury and personal circumstance. But I think he's one, like as passes in the comments, a puzzle we'll never know the answer to, certainly. Just on the other transfers, Sangare continues to be linked. The big central midfield, or the missing piece of the jigsaw that I kind of feel like we need. Is that one area for you, Gary? If we can get a defensive midfielder who can keep the ball ticking over better than we are able to at the moment, is that the biggest missing jigsaw in this team still for you?
No, I still think the striker, we've already touched on that, but I think the importance of defensive midfield players, the world over, seen how important they can be and how they've transformed teams and how important they are to teams because they give the more gifted players. That's not derogatory. The gifted players, the flair players, if you like, they know they can go. They know they can go and do things because they've got that player who's that good to protect what they're doing going forward. So, the importance of those players in world football, are right up there at the moment, and rightly so. I think I watched the Liverpool game yesterday, and a lot of the comments were defensive midfield. They were, having a little go at McAllister maybe for not being, the defensive midfield player that, does that protection. So, when you're listening to comments like that about Liverpool, you know how important a player like that can be. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that was an area we were looking at, and you'd encourage that, because Freuler didn't really work as that sort of player when he was here. Mangala does, a decent job in that position. So, yeah, why not? If you've got strength in depth, then that's all you can ask for. Obviously, we're not signed as many players as we did before. That was never going to happen. But, we're being more picky maybe this time and just, picking the players we want to rather than just going carte blanche and getting a load in.
Yeah, and after that Liverpool game, I think Klopp said what a mad market it is, and they're struggling to get, their number 6. So I'm not surprised that we are, especially as we're aiming a bit more ambitiously. I mean, are you still thinking we need 2 or 3 more, Greg, to have the full squad in place?
Yeah, but I think the issue is at the minute we're going for players that top half teams are going for, and these players and agents aren't seeing us as that yet. So we are going to be losing out to the West Ham, Spurs, all that. It's great that we're going for them, but maybe the ambition is a little bit higher than where we are at the minute. And Sangara's linked to some top clubs that are in Europe next season. So if we did manage to pull off a signing like that, that's as big as anything that came in last season. But I personally don't see us getting him. It's fantastic that we're going for that person, like type of player, and I'm sure if we keep trying, we'll get someone of that ilk. But I can't see it myself, just with the other teams involved.
I think the comments by Elanga were pretty decent for Forest. What he talked about coming to Nottingham Forest as a football club, I thought he was very, complimentary and very positive of why he came to the football club. And I think that can only help when you get players coming from somebody like Manchester United, that ilk, coming and saying that. And then when they get there, feeling that, they belong at a football club a little bit more than they maybe did at a previous one. That can only help players who come into, our football club, hopefully. And, better players, will maybe come. I'm surprised we didn't actually go for Ward-Prowse. I thought that might be. I think we talked about that the back end of last season if Southampton went down, but obviously that's not happened. And it's an interesting one, but I think players will start to come to us.
Yeah, there's going to be some deadline pressure very soon. Just over 2 weeks to go before teams have to tell you their best price. These long drawn out agent chats, cheap side bids, unrealistic expectations. It all gets smoked out in that final week. I think Sangari is going to move. I think that release clause makes him an attractive target for clubs in stronger positions than us. Unfortunately, it makes no sense for Leeds to keep hold of Tyler Adams. They can't justify having a player of that value on their books. I fully expected him to go to Chelsea before that one broke down. Interestingly as well, West Ham will be back in the market when they get this Paqueta cash from Man City. Brighton have got 115 million quid burning a hole in their pocket. So there's some big deals still to happen. So the Saudis are still active. There's a lot of money to come in and out of Premier League sides, and I think we're going to see a frenetic end to the window. The flip side of that is there's going to be deadline pressure on a decision around Brennan Johnson, and given that we know about the challenges of FFP, those two are going to be intrinsically linked. You're not going to see a 25-30 million pound incoming at Forest unless Brennan departs. So I think that is still the most seismic decision that we have to make in this window. But shopping this for me is a central defensive midfielder and a backup striker to Taiwo who can offer more than Chris Wood.
Is he worth 115 million, by the way? Just as a passing interest?
Well, they sign him for 4, so it's a tidy profit.
Goodness me, I don't see it. I really don't. I mean, Declan Rice, people were commenting on, how much he went for, and I think he's a better player, maybe. But who am I to comment?
I think he's better. I'll tell you who looked amazing at the weekend in that role was Bissouma. I mean, he was fantastic.
Yeah, he was. He surprised me. He really did.
Yeah.
But the lack of something else was a bit concerning for Tottenham.
Well, yeah. Although Maddison did all right in my fantasy team for me. It's a difficult balance for Forest with point of making the transfer market, because I actually would have liked to see. I thought he should have gone for Gustavo Hamer, who's gone to Sheffield United, who's not a glamorous player, but it's someone who we could have got. But I suppose, Greg, there's a difficult balance between being ambitious and pitching yourself up against top half teams and settling, because last season we settled for players who were available, who weren't targeted specifically, and we kind of fell foul of it a bit. And we getting it right is pushing it towards the deadline, isn't it? And it's making a few fans a bit tense, I guess.
And we're a club that loves a deadline signing these days as well, so it will be exciting those last few days. I'm sure there'll be reporters out the ground ready for something to happen. But like I said earlier, I just think we're punching with our targets at the minute, and so hopefully one of these comes off. But unless you try, it's not going to happen. I don't think we tried for Ward-Prowse because it was obvious he was already going elsewhere. But I just think it will happen. We'll get one of these big signings that we desperately need, and usually these days it's one that none of us are expecting. So it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks. But with the likes of Sheffield United getting that player, then obviously we're not. We'd like to think we're a little bit higher than them these days. So we'll see.
It's tough to get it right.
With players coming in, it doesn't always have to be a big signing. Sometimes the signings that come in, the couple we've seen already, that probably some people have not heard of, I think look pretty good. And sometimes you do get those sort of players. That's why it's so important in the background to see these players, to see them on a regular basis, and not just see maybe a video of them. To see what they're all about, to get the background, to see if they're good in the dressing room, because I think that's so important as well. And the times you go down to the training ground and watch training, which I've been lucky enough to do, and the players always come and say hello. They're very friendly. The banter and the camaraderie is always great to watch. The training sessions are very, very inspiring. Totally different to when I played, and that lifts you. when you see that, and you've got these players now who get a lot of stick, modern day players, for not doing this and not doing that. But what I've seen at Forest, I think the character of the players coming in is always a big plus. And you saw, people said Lingard, but you always saw him on the touchline, jumping up and down and being part of it, wanting to be part of it, even though he wasn't playing. So I think the importance of getting the right characters in there as well as the right ability is vitally important as well. And I think they're doing that particularly well.
Yeah, we need the right players for the right areas, for the right tactics, and that isn't easy. And we didn't necessarily have that last season. It was a panic to make a squad, but we've seen with Turner and Aina and Elanga coming in, they look like good bits of business. It's literally one game, so you don't want to judge them too quickly, but it looks promising. So if they get 2 more and they're good signings, because at the start of the season we all said we only need 4 or 5 signings, and I don't think we can be critical on August the 14th, which I think might have been the date we signed Morgan Gibbs-White last year, that there's still a long way to go. So let's judge. Yeah.
How long's Felipe out for? But I don't really know. I've not heard a great, anything about his injury or how long he's out for.
Oh, wow. I wouldn't expect him back this weekend. And Steve Cooper's injury press conferences are, red herrings quite often. I mean, he made it sound like Awoniyi and Niakate were completely out of this game and they were on the bench. So I think we'll just wait and see. But I wouldn't expect Felipe back too soon. I think that covers all the ground pretty much. Any other business, Greg? Anything you want to
add? Well, yeah, congratulations to Emily on her engagement. That's some good news in the week. So congrats to her. And just going back to one more thing on Forest that I wanted to talk about, the injury time. I know it's a subject that's been written about and spoken about a hell of a lot, but I'll start with a positive. When the 90th minute came up, they kept the clock rolling on the big screen. So I hope that's a new thing now, that it happens at every ground. So it is, yeah, I thought it must be. But if they are doing it by the rule, there was a hell of a lot more than 7 minutes injury time in that second half. And I still have this little feeling that if it was Arsenal 2-1 down, it would have been put up with 12, 13 minutes injury time. So until they decide they're going to actually stop the clock and start the clock properly, it's still going to be favoured, much more favourable for the top 4 or 5 teams. I mean, if we were 2-1 up and it chucks up 12 minutes injury time, of course it's going to benefit the top teams. So I still don't think they've got it right. But the only positive from it was, like I say, the clock keeps going after the 90th minute, so I ain't got to keep looking at my watch.
No.
Well, congratulations to Taiwo as well, because it was his birthday, and did his wife give birth?
Yes.
On Saturday as well. So massive congratulations there as well.
Yes. Congratulations.
That was.
Congratulations to Emily on her engagement. I don't know if it was public knowledge or not. I think it was. She put it on her Instagram.
Yeah, she put it everywhere, yeah.
Oh, everywhere. Okay. How much are you following her?
Instagram and all that.
Okay. Before I come to Thames, I've done a terrible job hosting because I missed one important talking point from the game about the Declan Rice handball. We went all the way through it and I skirted around it. Just going around the room quickly, who thought it was a penalty? Anyone?
Look, it's a VAR penalty, and I hate the fact that it is. But the blunt fact is they review that and they give it. I don't like that it is. I don't think he's done anything other than tried to be physical, and his eyes are closed. He don't want to get clattered, and it's clumsy, isn't it? But if that goes to VAR, that is given as a penalty.
Yeah, and next week we'll see one exactly the same given as a penalty. That's the annoying part of it. You don't mind if every one now is not a penalty, but that ain't going to happen. There's going to be some different VAR guy in the studio who'll disagree and say it's a penalty. That's what's the annoying part of it all.
What game was it where a penalty was given? Was it Everton Fulham where it hits
Luton
his elbow?
Brighton.
Luton Brighton. So that ball was crossed in. That defender did not have a clue that ball was going to hit the back of his elbow. Not a clue at all. So if you use that same argument with Declan Rice, where was that ball going to drop if his arm wasn't there? Because, he didn't mean to handball it, but he hit it right in the 6-yard box where there's a definite goal scoring chance. So, for certain pundits to just laugh it off and, be a bit childish about it, VAR has to look at that. If a ball hits your hand in the box, VAR has to look at it. And if they're not, the job isn't being done correctly because there's a discussion there at least.
What's he closing his eyes for anyway?
Yeah.
If you head it, if you close your eyes, it's your fault that it hits your bloody hand. Oh, sorry, I swore there, but it's your fault. You know, you keep your eyes open, it don't hit your hand. Close your eyes, it might.
I didn't think it was a penalty. If it was given against Forest, I'd be fuming. I didn't think. I thought he was tussling naturally. People compared it with the Maguire thing about unnatural arm position. I think that ball was dropping out of the sky, and Maguire had his arm up like this. I always try and judge if it was at the other end, and if that was given against us, I just can't see how that was a penalty personally.
Where was his hand? Where was his arm?
It was interlocked with bodies, wasn't it? Basically,
I just see your arm up again. That was all. Yeah, that was.
The Jackson one was much more of a penalty.
There's got to be a discussion, though. There has to be a discussion. It has to be looked at.
Yeah, I agree with that. But VAR is so inconsistent, isn't it? I mean, Jackson, it hits him clearly on the arm. His arm's in a weird, funny play. I don't know. It wasn't by his side or anything, and that's not given.
But the daft thing was afterwards, he said it hit his chest.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, that tells you that he knows it's hit his hand, and he probably should have been a penalty.
Yeah, and I didn't think the Son one, the Brentford one, was a penalty either. I thought.
I thought he was there.
Yeah, I thought he dived or made very much made the, because the thing that they're saying about VAR this year is contact with consequence. So to try and cut out this feigning stuff to get a penalty. That's a different game though, anyway. But yeah, it was. I'm sorry I forgot to discuss that until the 55th minute of the podcast. Temps, any other business?
Well, I was just going to mention on a light-hearted note to finish that Steve Cooper dresses almost exclusively in Paul Smith now on the sideline. It's good to see as Matt Davis's profile gets bigger and bigger and his podcast gets bigger and bigger. He too has started now to dress like a Premier League manager. So well done, Matt. Most fashionable member of the podcast today. Gary's got a loud T-shirt on, but he's forewent the usual Ted Baker dress shirt. So I'm giving best dress today to
That's
Matt
a
Davis.
Ted Baker T-shirt, isn't it, Gary?
It is, yeah, absolutely.
It is
I can't believe I'm going to give Steve some right stick when I see him now, because every time he sees me in one of my shirts, he slaughters me. So I'm going to have a pop at him as well.
Well, I will say, this is a birthday treat that was paid for. And if Steve Cooper's paying for all his Paul Smith, then fair play. But I suspect he might not be, because he's giving them a lot.
We know you've gone big time, Davis. Come on.
Right. Any other thing else from you, Gary, before we go?
No, I think we've said enough, don't you?
I think we've said plenty. I think the people will probably say we said far too much. Right. I think we'll leave it there. Thanks very much to everyone who's watched along. Do like and subscribe. I'm going to be a bit more of a nag about that this season because I'm not very good at it, but it does certainly help us out and give us a good iTunes review. Greg, thank you very much.
No.
I think we've lost Greg, basically. Temps, thank you very much.
Cheers, Matt. See you soon.
Thank you, Gary.
An absolute pleasure.
We shall be back on Thursday, I think, with more of a preview on the Sheffield United game, where we'll talk tactics, formations, team selection, and any transfer news that breaks between now and then. Have a good few days, everyone. And in the meantime, we shall see you soon.